Well, for your minder, it's going to be a lot easier.
Yeah, there we go. Where is he? He's there. He's in his green, and we're matching. I
Absolutely.
like it.
Well, Costa, welcome to the Royal Adelaide Show for 2023. Last year was your first year, and you came back.
Oh, I came back, and I've come back to see what your creative powers has produced, and no disappointment. I can't wait to look around the garden.
Well, let me talk it through. Now, first off, I'm actually going to present you with a green beanie. Green is my colour for the year.
It is.
And this is a very special beanie. It's got bees on it, and we both love bees. But I actually asked the amazing lady, Robin Shearer, who made it, I said, this is for Costa, and he's going to need chooks on it too.
Look at this.
So it's got, isn't that gorgeous?
That is incredible. Look at the scale. Like, that is a perfectly scaled. They are brilliant chooks.
Aren't they gorgeous?
Oh, here goes.
So Robin was part of SALA, which is our South Australian Living Arts Festival, and I met her there. So
I love it.
Lovely lady.
Okay, what do you reckon?
It looks fantastic. You're a beanie man. You're
I am a
beanie man. I don't like beanies, I get hat hair. Well, so let me tell you about the garden.
Yeah.
So the thing that I wanted to do this year, the Royal Adelaide Show gives me the opportunity to demonstrate something I'm particularly passionate about at the time.
Yep.
And one of the things I've been concerned about as I drive around are the things that we're all hearing about. You know, black roofs, black walls, monument grey, fake turf, no plants. It's really important for our future and that of future generations that we garden. And so this year, for the first time, I've actually decided that I need to demonstrate what I don't want as well as what I do want.
And that's a powerful tool, because people need to see it. And when they see it, when you look at this part of the garden, you remember the things you see out there, particularly in a lot of the new suburbs. And these are convenient, modular ways to just build quick and move on. And you've got all the elements here.
So the garden this year is called Cool, and we're going to start by showing people the dark side. And this is very uncool, right? It's dark in colour. You know, in South Australia, or in Adelaide, we're the hottest state, you know, in the driest continent. And we're in for a hot summer. We're being told about heat waves. Heat is the number one natural killer of Australians. We're being
and that's a big stat. Like,
that's huge.
And you don't hear about that, you know, in the news, except for when there's a couple of hot days in a row and they go, oh, you know, there's been some deaths and blah, blah, blah. But generally...
And it's not only on the day if people, you know, don't put their air conditioning on. It's the fact that their medications actually are affected by the heat and they're not kept in the fridge. And so we need to work out, I mean, gardening, every garden can make a difference. So I wanted to demonstrate what I don't like. So here it's all monument grey. Apologies to the manufacturers of that, but you know, it's what I see in developments around me. 70% are black roofs and dark. I've got black pebbles. Now, what people mightn't understand about pebbles is they might look good in your backyard, but the ones in the bags were mined from active waterways in third world countries. So what did they do to someone else's backyard?
In order to create this inefficient weed space, because ultimately it's a hot space, which is exactly what weeds blow in there, and then that means people will come with spray and constantly spray the garden, and all it does is add up to a really toxically hot space.
Absolutely. And I've put in my favourite fake turf, right? If you don't want to have lawn, don't have lawn. But understand, I've got readings of synthetic turf on a 35-degree day, and it's 65, 66 degrees. Now, it's plastic. It's guaranteed for 10 years, which means in 11 years we'll be putting it to landfill. We don't need more plastic. If you don't want turf, don't have it. But let's not think that fake turf is a sustainable or cool alternative.
Well, particularly when you see people putting it out on a nature strip, like as some deluded idea that they're not going to have to maintain it.
Absolutely.
And then all that happens is it gets filled with weeds.
And then they spray rather than weed.
Yeah.
Oh, does my head in.
Yeah.
And I have actually had a go at a plant, right, which is not in my nature. Someone said the other day they didn't think I'd ever bag a plant, but it's my least favourite plant, and it's yucca. elephantiapes, which is seen everywhere. They're quite hazardous to eye and ear, but they're just a lack of biodiversity, a lack of, they don't provide habitat really, maybe ants and rats, maybe, but, so this is all about messaging. We're hearing terms like climate change, deforestation, what else can I see on there? El Nino, heat wave, global warming, food crisis. These gardens are not helping, right?
And the interesting thing, we hear the word crisis, and that's a convenient way to stir people up, but also hold them down. Because crisis, overwhelm, what can I do? I can't do anything. I give up. I'll just do what's easy.
So, look at this. This way to a cool future.
Or a different sort of cool.
Absolutely, and again, this garden is trying to demonstrate that every garden, no matter what the space, can make a difference. This whole plot is 10 by 12 metres, and this 1 and a bit metre strip here basically is indicating to people a native verge. If, habitat, a lack of urban habitat is one of the biggest challenges to urban wildlife, and if you haven't got space in your own garden, why not plant the verge up with native plants, which you've been instrumental in bringing to people's attention? Yeah,
and I look at this and I'm immediately going to the Melbourne Flower Show where Jack Semler did her meadows and swords, and like this as a meadow, this is densely planted. You have a large number of plants that spread and cover the ground, so that reduces any potential weed takeover. It cools the ground, of course, but look at what you've got in here. There's bees, there's frogs,
there's lizards,
there's birds tucked away up here. There's flowers that are really the backbone of biodiversity, because they bring all of the invertebrates, which are then predators and predated on, and that says it all right there in that space.
Well, it does, and if everyone worked on their verges and ideally planted them up with local indigenous plants, we'd create wildlife corridors. So down here we've got a native bee hotel, we've got and there's no point having a native bee hotel if you don't have a native bee restaurant.
Yeah, exactly, because no one's going to come.
Absolutely.
It's just sitting there in the desert. They're going to go like, that's too hot. And there's nothing to eat. So why would I even think about booking a room there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really important that we use every bit of space we've got. And we live in a lucky country where we can be outside and entertain. And entertaining with family and friends is really important to us as a culture.
Yeah.
So we need to go back to the old days, which was, in the old days, every house had a vine-covered pergola, didn't they? A great vine-covered pergola.
At both my grandparents' places, they had the old ornamental grape. And it had, the grapes on there, and you'd eat them, and they'd be really tangy, the outer skins, and you'd eat them and eat them and eat them until your stomach was like, I can't eat anymore, and then you'd be like, I can't go and play. But it created shade. The smell, the aroma, it was just something that I remember straight away as soon as you talk grapes. I'm there at my grandparents' house.
Well, so these days, if you talk to people about putting in a pergola for shade, what they mean is they're putting in a colour-bond roof, which is solid shade, which is not cool. No. So here, the idea of a vine-covered pergola is really important. And we're talking deciduous vines because they allow the winter sunning, which is really important for us. And also, they keep us cool in summer, in the hot part of the year. But the Royal Show, my show gardens are always inside. So how can I demonstrate a vine-covered pergola inside when it's inside for 10, 12 days? And, deciduous plants have no leaves on them. So what we've done is we've done a stylised pergola. And we've got a metal grapevine that my kids welded up, growing on top of it.
Stunning.
But I also wanted to show an affordable way of making a pergola. So I grew up in a plant nursery where all our shade houses were made out of Gauw pipe. Water
pipe brackets,
Water pipe brackets. And, we've made it slightly more complicated by bending it, and that's probably out of everyone's reach to do that. But you could just use those brackets and make a really simple, inexpensive structure. Because, I'm hearing what people are spending on pergolas, and it's tens of thousands, and it doesn't have to be like that. And, you could have grapevines. If you were renting, you could grow some of my favourite vertical veggies up there.
Exactly.
And they would be fantastic. So the vine-covered pergola to create that outdoor room, which everyone wants. And, I've got a big tribe, so it's really important for me to have an outdoor room. And here, this is all about plants, and lots of them. Many gardens now, it's about the hard landscaping, not the actual plants.
Yeah, it's true. And so much of it ends up being, a whole lot of gravel or a whole lot of paving or, as you said over there, a whole lot of pebbles.
Yeah.
And that's another heat sink.
Absolutely. So one of the things I'm passionate about is mitigating the urban heat island effect. And if people don't understand that, that's basically in cities we've got lots of hot, hard surfaces, and it raises the temperature in the cities much hotter than sort of rural areas. And then people put their air conditioning on, which pumps out hot air, which actually makes it worse.
Yeah.
So, overseas in Europe, Germany's worried about the urban heat island effect.
Yeah.
Cool parts of the world are worried about the urban heat island effect. Here in Adelaide, here in Australia, we need to be worried about the urban heat island effect, and what can we do to cool it down, green it up and cool it down. And so part of this garden, again, trees. I can't have big shade trees in here, so I borrow trees. There's two types of trees we want in our garden. We want native trees on the verge for biodiversity. But if you get precious winter sun in your house, it warms your soul. So I'm a big fan of deciduous trees, and they could be fruiting trees for that cooling shade and passive heating and cooling.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is it's not this native exotic battleground.
No.
It's using the species in the right location for the effect you want.
Absolutely.
You want the winter sun in, deciduous is the way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing I've come up with, because the garden's called Cool, every garden makes a difference, but I've come up with this idea, and cool's meant to be a play on words. I love plays on words.
Yep.
Not only is it cool as in not hot, but it's also cool as in hip, thumbs up, trendy, gardening is the new black. But I've come up with this concept of a 5-star garden rating system. And the first part of that is it cool, in terms of temperatures?
Temperature, yeah.
But is it livable? Some gardens I see, and they might look spectacular, but would I feel relaxed? Would I want to hang out in them?
You feel like, this is a house open for inspection, and don't touch anything.
Or for
don't
a
put
magazine.
Yeah. It's like, there's the token coffee table book and the smell of coffee in the background.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't feel safe here.
Yeah. So I want something that's livable.
Yeah.
And then I've got here Habitat Haven. Sustainable is really important, and productive. So while this part of the garden is mainly exotics, and there's lots of flowers, because if we don't have flowers, we're not bringing in all the beneficials. As we come around the corner, the focus becomes more on being productive. And again, whatever your space, we know we can grow food. And we're not trying to be self-sufficient. We're just trying to improve the food security for us and our family.
Supplement, create a wonderful educational tool for for families with young children.
Absolutely.
And it builds responsibility, in terms of having to look after them and go out daily and routines. All of those sorts of things that tie those 5 elements together. How did you struggle picking those 5? Like, were there more that you wanted, or did you find that sort of says it all?
Well, I actually was thinking about how can I get the message across, and I thought, this is my big volunteer gig for the year, and it's all about getting a message through. And I decided the 5-star, it's got to be simple, right? Many years ago I noticed that non-gardeners would come to the show and they'd be doing selfies in front of my patch. So if I have simple messages, whether it's on bee-friendly gardening or whether it's on balance and all sorts of things, that they might take them home. And if they thought about that, and we're also demonstrating that the dark side of my garden, the hot side, the anti-garden, it gets red crosses rather than green ticks. But yeah, so it's an interesting concept, and if we all applied it to our garden, go, okay, well maybe I can improve that a little bit, it would be really good. They're the 5 things that I think are important.
Yeah.
And your 5 things might be different, but it's about getting the message out. Now, we'll start here because, this has actually worked really well. This is my chicken run. Now, every year at the Royal Show, I bring, I get some new chickens. These are little bantam girls.
Hello.
If I brought any of my chickens down here, which is a popular question, my girls are way too feral.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They'd be off and running around the show.
Yeah,
they'd be on the Ferris wheel before you know it. So I get little new chicks every year, and they come home and live with me. Yeah, that's right.
What's this place?
So, and I decided that we would do a chicken run. Now, chicken runs aren't a new concept, but it also means that the chickens can run around here. And yesterday we released the girls. There are 4 in there, and I was a bit nervous that they mightn't like it, but they've been out and about and having a great time. So chickens are fabulous because they give us eggs. Even if they didn't, they're still fabulous.
Yeah,
they're great
exactly.
pets. But they're also fabulous because they are part of recycling organic matter, recycling our food scraps and turning it into garden gold, which is compost. And that's something you're passionate about.
Yeah, definitely. And something like this is a really tangible way for people to see how you can have, a small instalment and fit it into a small yard, but still be really humane about, their needs, and
Absolutely.
that they can move around, and you can bring all of that education into your day-to-day.
Absolutely. And they're like a movable garden art because they move around and they're such characters. And here we've got veggie gardens. Now, I have done a green wall installation here. This is a green wall that actually belongs to Erbray High School, and I borrow it each year for the show, so the students help me plant it up with veggies. I'll be honest and say in South Australia growing a green wall of veggies is hard work.
Tough, yeah.
Because this is a good green wall. It has big capacity in the soil, but it's a lot of water and it's a lot of maintenance. But it's really to say, okay, if you had a tiny courtyard and that was your only option.
Yeah, or a balcony.
balcony.
And that's it, you got this much floor space, but then hang on, you double it
by growing up
either end.
Yeah.
It's a valuable tool in the right place.
It is. And so then we've got a couple of raised beds, and next to the veggies, it's really important we have flowers to bring in the beneficial bugs. We've got daisies and umbels. They're loved by, butterflies. They are loved by butterflies, but ladybirds, lacewings and hoverflies with tiny mouths. They need the tiny flowers. And those good bugs then help manage the bad. We've got water for bees because bees can't swim, so you need shallow water. And there's lots of whimsy in this garden because it has to be over the top to get people's attention.
That's right.
And
having things collated into those categories, 5 here, 3 things here, or this idea, that idea. The signage, I think, Sophie, I love the signage because we may know that.
Yeah.
But it's like, daisies and umbels. People can ask the question. They remember the word.
Yep.
Pumpkin patch. This is a pumpkin. This is art. This is a butterfly. You can make the garden fun and creative and artistic and whimsy, like you say. That idea of splashing colour.
Yeah.
And making it not a chore. Gardening's not a chore.
It should be fun, and it should, now I love fun in the garden. This giant pumpkin, these are all Royal Show props that we recycle every year.
That's so good.
And when it comes back to my place, I actually use it as a frame to grow climbing veggies, and we always have pumpkins hanging on it. But, if we can get kids interested and make gardens fun, many of the gardens I see aren't fun for kids, are they?
No, and let alone just the idea that people will say, go out there and, pull those weeds out. Like, that's
I'm
really,
scarred for life
that's
from that.
really inspiring. Okay, I'm off, sort of thing. Whereas you see something like this in the garden, you see the colour, you create mystery, you create interest, you create flavours, you create smells. That's how we get the hook into a generation, and not just young, like into all generations, like
Absolutely.
intergenerationally. This is telling stories for all ages.
It is. And, it's really important. I often see where people they do their backyard and they spend thousands on the outdoor entertaining area and decks and paving and all this, and the child gets a $25 plastic clamshell to go out and play
in the corner.
Yeah,
but not on the grass, because that's got to be.
Yeah, that's right. And
like
hedges.
Wembley.
Yeah. So we've got to make gardening fun for kids of all ages. You and me included.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Soph, I mean, looking at this, when I look at the garden that you created last year on this same space, and the way that you've crafted this message around cool, and the use of the language, and the actual visual translation of the story with the language into this three-dimensional, see-through, motivational kind of space, that it's going to affect a lot of people.
Well, that's my goal.
I can feel it already.
To make a difference. And for people that are watching and you can't actually get to the Royal Adelaide Show, you can actually read all about it on my website. You can download the brochure for people coming to the show. We always have this brochure that's bright and colourful and lots of information on there. But also, if they're not into lots of information, they can just pick bits. And the thing that I love about doing this is that I designed this probably 6 months ago, and we draw it up. And then people always go, it actually looks like the picture. It's like, yeah, I saw it in my mind. I've got to create it.
How do you feel like explaining to people, like, the idea that comes, and then it's a synthesis of everything that you've learned and everything that you have picked up through the stories you've been able to film, through the places and gardens you've visited? What's it like to kind of somehow put it into this? What is it? It's a
10 by 12.
10 by 12.
Yep.
Yet this has got 10 by 12 years. This has got 120 years and more, like, crammed in. What's it like? Like, do you find you got too much and you can't get it all in, or have you just managed to craft it all in there?
Well, probably my capacity to get more in. But already I'll be thinking about it now. What could I do next year?
Yeah.
And so it's both you and I. Well, to me, the most important thing we can do is make a difference.
Yeah.
Right? We're in this role where we have the capacity to influence. So if we don't use that power, and we've got to use it for good and not for evil.
Yeah.
And so it'll be interesting for me to watch people's reaction to the dark side. My worst fear is they're going to see that and think it looks good. But hopefully there's enough graffiti on the backside that they'll get the message. And maybe they'll get to thinking, because we can all make choices. Yeah. I live in the fastest growing town in Australia. I love where I live. There's development going on all around me. A lot of what I see isn't sustainable. And people buying just don't know any better.
No,
right?
And they're not offered any better.
They might be, but they might think it's more expensive. It doesn't have to be. It's every choice you make, everywhere along the line, from black roofs and black walls. Someone said to me the other day, "Oh, but I like black because it makes my plants pop." Well, in summer it'll make them crisp.
It'll pop.
So it'll pop. And we're in for a heat wave, so it'll be really interesting. I just think the message, we need to get it out there that every garden can make a difference.
Yeah.
And we're both biased, but I reckon we're right.
It's true. Yeah, we are. We are biased, but I think it's nice to be able to really share that bias in digestible pieces.
Yeah.
And that's really what I can feel here from the moment I looked at it. And the idea that it's modular, that you can grow in containers, you can grow vertically, you can add your creativity, you can use wicking, you can have edible, you can have native, you can incorporate all those elements into a synthesis, like into a really functional but beautiful space. It's beautiful as well. Like, this looks stunning.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yet it has so much going on.
Thank you, Costa.
Oh, Sophie, big congrats.
Thank you.
It's just It's just a wonderful reflection of everything that you wanted to share, but at the same time, to you and to all of the volleys
Yeah,
and the fam that helped you.
I have an
helped you
amazing
build
team
it.
of volleys, up to 14 people a day at least. Feed them cake and then you get amazing volunteers.
Will work for cake.
Yeah, that's right. And also, you know, my kids have grown up since they were babies. We've always been down here at the Royal Show building. For people interstate that don't know, the Royal Adelaide Show gets about a third of Adelaide will turn up over the 9 days that it runs. We have the highest per capita visitation of our Royal Show in Australia. You know, Sydney gets more visitors, but per capita we have the highest.
That's
it's
massive.
part of our culture, and it's not. Sometimes people think it's all the commercial stuff. It's about information and inspiration all around us.
That's right here. Definitely.